It's time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
On a Monday, and great to have you with us all across America and Canada for this 60-minute extravaganza. Lots to get to. We will be joined by Brian Twining a little later in the program to recap Joey Logano's triumphant return to the winner's circle, taking the checkered flag in Texas this weekend. Noah Dalzell drops by in about 10 minutes from SB Nation. Does a great job covering the Boston Celtics. We'll get her thoughts previewing the Knicks and the Celtics. That Eastern Conference semifinal playoff series gets underway on Monday night. And we do start things in the NBA, and Sam Yarnell is here. If I had been a betting man this weekend, Sam Yarnell, I would have been taken to the cleaners. I ran around telling anybody who would listen that they had to take the Houston Rockets in Game 7 of this series. I even told the guy in the front lobby at the clubhouse where I live, told the guy, I said, run, bet your rent, take the Rockets. It's a lock, baby. It is a mortal lock. There's no way they're losing Game 7 the way Games 5 and 6 went. He said, sir, I'm not much of a gambler. I said, well, you need to become one. How'd that work out for me? Well, apparently not too well, because the Warriors showed up defensively in a huge way. Stephen Curry, when they were up, 10 at the half or 12 at the half, and Stephen Curry barely had a point, you knew there was trouble for the Houston Rockets in this game. And then Curry exploded in the fourth quarter. And while he wasn't filling up the stat sheet with points, he was doing it everywhere else. Buddy Hield had a big first half. And look, the Rockets fell into the same problem in many ways that the Pistons fell into, Sam, where they simply ran out of answers. And I think they're going to be good long term. I think they'll make some moves in the offseason and address some of the deficiencies on this team. But ultimately, you've got to lose before you win. And that was the case here again with Houston as the Warriors find a way and get the win in Game 7.
It was, but Jason, overall, I think we can both agree on, wow, what a tough weekend for the NBA. Just as an organization, as a sport, you have two Game 7, and they're both just utter blowouts. Yeah. Neither of them were particularly ever close. Actually, not particularly. Neither of them were ever close. It was really just a tough weekend for the NBA. And you kind of yearn for those people who continue this rabid fight that the NBA postseason is better than the NHL, because for some reason that was like the hot debated topic last night, and I was like, you're using the wrong evidence if you're talking about this Nuggets-Clippers game, more importantly this Warriors-Rockets game. You're right. The Thompson defense we knew was only going to take them so far. I was with you, though. I thought the Rockets would win it simply because it felt like the Warriors were done. But, I said to you on Friday, gosh, I wonder how many times in his career Steph Curry has won back-to-back playoff games, or has lost back-to-back playoff games. And then you wonder further how many times in his career, I think it's only once, as far as I could tell, that he's lost back-to-back-to-back playoff games. So, the rarity became ever more prevalent to me. And I think that's just as simple as what it came down to in this game. Like you said, Steph is just that guy. He's been in that situation so many times before. Fate of the world resting on his shoulders. Aliens got the death beam pointed at Earth. And I'm going with Steph Curry. I'm not taking Iguodala.
I'll tell you this. We crushed Draymond Green when he deserves to be crushed. He was enormous in this game. He made Şengün's life hell. He came out in the early going. I think he had 8 or 9 points in the first few minutes of this game. He did it at both ends of the floor. It almost looked like Şengün just ran out of gas. Watch him. Everything was short late in the game. It just looked like the Rockets ran out of gas late in this game. Thompson getting hurt in that third quarter was also very important to sort of the outcome, because while the final score looked like a blowout, the reality was that was a 3-point game in the latter stages of the third quarter before the Warriors pulled away and then pulled away for good in the second half. kudos to the Indiana Pacers, who came out in game one. And I know there was no Darius Garland for the Cavaliers in this game, but man, hats off to the Pacers, who go on the road in game one and lay down the lumber in Cleveland. And I'll tell you, I mean, you want to talk about a convincing performance from start to finish. That was a convincing performance from start to finish. And I'll tell you the one thing that stands out to me about the Pacers, and I think it bears watching in this series, their depth. My God, I mean, they are the anti-Knicks. Whereas we talk about Towns and Brunson and what those guys do, and Josh Hart and the Knicks starters playing 38 minutes, 39 minutes every night. This Pacers team, they go deep and they go strong. And I was very impressed with what I saw out of the Pacers in game one. That's going to be a long series.
All right. Deep is an interesting word, because it's deep, sure, with a lot of Jags, a lot of just another guy. Benedict Mathurin is their sixth man. Obi Toppin gets significant. You, Jason Page, at the end of Obi Toppin's run with the Knicks, could not say enough poor things about this guy.
That's not true.
But now all of a sudden he's contributing to their depth. I'm not buying it with the Pacers. They had one hot game, sure, and the Cavs were shorthanded, like you mentioned. I don't give them a shot in this series. It was great that they won one game and the scoring was well distributed. But at the end of the day, they can't rely on Tyrese Halliburton for 13 assists every game. It's as simple as that.
I'm just saying, man. Watch out. I mean, Mathurin had 11. I mean, how many points did they get from there? 11, 18, 20, 29 points from their bench in that game.
Thomas Bryant saw minutes in that game, former Washington Wizard.
All the starters in double figures. It's going to be a long series. Last but not least, and frankly, they should be getting hammered a lot more than this. But what took place in Denver? I mean, man, James Harden, you avoided the post-game press conference. You shouldn't show your face anywhere again after what you did in Game 7 for that Clippers team that played its heart out in that series and then, laid an egg in Denver against the Nuggets, who go on to win in that opening round series. Now they'll get the right to go and play against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Sam, real quick on the Clippers falling
Dallas
apart.
pregame host was exactly right. If you don't know the rant I'm talking about, go look it up, because that's all you need to know.
Yeah, James Harden, he was hardening. I guess we could say that, right? Yeah, he was hardening. We're coming back. Noah Dalzell and I will preview the Celtics and Knicks next. Welcome back to this Monday edition of SportsWrap. Let's talk some more NBA. We told you what happened over the weekend. Now we're going to try to tell you what might happen and what could happen, at least in one of the conference semifinal series. Look, I ain't going to lie, this is the one that has the most interest to me. I'm a Knicks fan.
I didn't know you were a Knicks fan.
This is going to be, I have a feeling this is going to be a painful 10 or 12 days, Noah Dalzell. She does a terrific job with SB Nation on the Boston Celtics. She does some women's basketball for them as well. Every time, I was just saying to her off air, every time I open up my X feed, it says Noah Dalzell is doing some live broadcast or some live feed of something. She is one of the busiest people I know. She is a rising star in the world of basketball, and she joins us on the show, so I love getting her on. So, look, I'm asking the wrong person this question. Make the argument for how, I don't know, the Celtics overlook the Knicks. The Knicks are healthy for the first time playing the Celtics. Give me some argument for how this thing isn't a 5-game series.
So the argument has nothing to do with the Knicks or the Celtics, and it has everything to do with just how unpredictable basketball can be, and how a guy that you game plan to leave open for a series can get hot. And I think Josh Hart has the opportunity to be an X factor in the series. If you look back at 2023, Miami versus Boston in the conference finals, Nobody had Miami winning that series. Nobody had Miami taking a 3-0 lead. That was a different Celtics team. They were way less consistent than this team. But still, crazier things have happened. So, I don't really have a strong case to be made for the Knicks on paper. Or, of what we've seen this season, there was clearly a gap with the 4 times they faced off. But I'm not one of those people that's saying this is a home run. Celtics are going to crush them. There's not going to be a question, because that's just not reflective of how this sport typically plays out. So that's your biggest hope. Unfortunately, it's not specific to your team, but I think there's always a chance.
How about in the way I'll and this isn't an argument. This is just I guess a observational fact in terms of what we've seen in this postseason across the board. How about in the way the postseason has been officiated? Does the fact that the officials have allowed it to become so much more physical, that the league has allowed it to become so much more physical, does it benefit one team or the other to you?
I don't know. I mean, in theory, it's a disadvantage for the Celtics, just compared to most teams, because that has been something that they haven't necessarily leaned into, that more physical style of play. I thought they handled it pretty well against Orlando, to be honest. There's a lot was said about the fact that Orlando was able to limit the 3-point attempts, but they ultimately took care of business pretty easily. From a Jalen Brunson standpoint, obviously he gets to the line a lot. If they let more stuff go, that hurts him a little bit. So I think it probably balances out a bit. I think officiating just needs to be more consistent in general. I was watching the Warriors-Rockets game yesterday, and I was getting frustrated with missed calls, and I was like, I actually don't care at all about who wins this game. So, I don't necessarily think that one team style of play is going to be hurt more, because Tatum and Brown have both gotten so much better at handling that physicality. They were getting to the line way above their regular season clips during that Orlando series, and so in that sense, I could see that continuing for them as well.
How about Karl Anthony Towns? And I know it sounds weird to call him an X factor for the Knicks, because he's obviously such a huge part of what they do. Because everybody's going to focus their attention on Jalen Brunson. We know clutch player of the year. We saw the shot he hit against Detroit to sort of hold that down. From a Joe Mazzulla perspective and sitting in on his press conferences, what seems to be the number one focus for him when he looks at this Knicks team outside of Jalen Brunson?
Yeah, I think for him, it's the things that are the number one focus, or at least how he communicates to us. But I do think it's genuine. Is not specific to the Knicks. He always brings up the same 3 things: the margins, right? The offensive rebounding, taking care of the ball. Those are the things that he kind of hammers home regardless of who the opponent is. And I think he's not going to overdo dealing. If Jalen Brunson goes up for 40 every night, I don't think that's the end of the world for the Celtics. But if they're fouling him, and if they're giving him easy looks, that's going to be more the problem. I do agree with you that Karl Anthony Towns is an X factor in the series, the same way that I have Kristaps Porzingis is an X factor, because ultimately, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Jalen Brunson, they're guys that consistently show up in these moments. You know what you're going to get. You're not going to get any of those guys to not fully perform. We've just seen it. We have enough of a sample size to know. Karl Anthony Towns is a guy that I think has the ability to go off for 35 on any given night. But then you also see some nights where he's just really not much of a factor offensively. And that's the same thing with Porzingis, where he really struggled offensively in the first round, and if anything, hurt them a little bit on that end, but has the opportunity to be one of the top scorers in any game in this series. And so it's the guys that I'm not sure what to expect that I'm kind of keeping my eye on, because they're not as proven of playoff performers, but at the same time, they're so talented and they have the ability to swing any game or swing this matchup potentially.
Was there anything in that final meeting between them? Because all these games were blowouts, except the final meeting between the two teams at Madison Square Garden, where I think it went to overtime, and the Celtics wound up winning. But the Knicks kept that game close. They were up late. Was there anything that you could glean from that last matchup that if you're a Knicks fan or even a Celtics fan, that would give you pause if you're a Celtics fan and hope if you're a Knicks fan?
I didn't think the Celtics brought their A game to that one until later on. I think they kind of, they actually had a really good end to the season. They had a 6-0 road trip. They, I was at all these games. They're very impressed. They never really took their foot off the gas. And in that game, they did a little bit and then kind of pulled it together. But Karl Anthony Towns had a great first half. Tatum was guarding him. He was pretty unstoppable in the post. I think they'll live with it. Like, I think they'll live with the tough twos for him, which was kind of what he was getting at. But he certainly seemed like he had a little bit of an advantage in that matchup when Tatum was guarding him. And I wouldn't be surprised if they start off with Tatum on Karl Anthony Towns again. So he has the opportunity to kind of get things going offensively.
How do you, if you're Missoula, real quick here in the final 30 seconds, how do you keep them from getting rusty? You know, some might make the argument the Cavaliers came out rusty, obviously missing Darius Garland, and we saw what the Pacers did in game 1 of that series. How does Joe Missoula avoid that sort of, that layoff, that rust, that letdown in game 1?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I think part of it is just human nature. I know they've been practicing hard this week, and they have a lot of experience with this. Like last year, the entire playoff run, they had like 8 days in between every series because they kept winning in 5 or 4. So they are a veteran group that can handle it. And I think because they were a lot of players were banged up, I think they did prefer this route versus having the quicker turnarounds. But I mean, you see it all the time. The team that has the advantage with the rest advantage comes out looking a little sluggish. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. But usually, I think you can kind of snap out of that pretty quick. And I think with Cleveland, you saw maybe that early on, but that's probably not what happened in the fourth quarter.
Noah Dalzell, SB Nation, enjoy the series. Always great to talk to you.
Thank you.
We're coming back. Coming up in 10 minutes, a muddy track for the Kentucky Derby. Hope you had sovereignty. Talk about that coming up. And hope you didn't have a bet on Mike Tirico to make it through the entire broadcast. Yeesh. Rough day for our buddy Mike Tirico. Let's talk some hockey because of the 2 weekends, as we talked about in the opening segment, or as Sam alluded to in the opening segment, the better of the 2 weekends was certainly in the NHL, Sam Yarnell, where you had 2 epic Game 7s and 2 epic rallies by the home teams, those being the Dallas Stars and the Winnipeg Jets. And let's start with what happened in Dallas on Saturday, because I was watching. I actually tuned in because, again, when am I tuning into hockey? And I know Dennis Bernstein would yell at me if I admitted this. When do I tune into hockey? When the basketball ends, of course. So as soon as it was all over between the Nuggets and the Clippers, which frankly I could have turned it off at halftime, I stuck through it. I tuned over to ESPN, and it was 2-0. Actually, it was 1-0 Avalanche. And I tuned in right for the start of the third period. And they came out in the start of the third period, and boom, first shift, bang. Quick goal, Avalanche up 2-0. And Dallas looked lifeless. And then all of a sudden, and they looked lifeless for a while. And there was like 6 or 7 minutes left. And then you get a power play goal, and then you get another goal, and then the floodgates open, and former Avalanche player turned Dallas star Mikko Rantanen gets in there and scores a few goals and victimizes his former team. And the fans are going nuts. I mean, the atmosphere is insane. Sean McDonough's losing his ever-loving mind. And Dallas somehow, some way, without Jason Robertson in this series, finds a way to take down the Avalanche in 7 games. Remarkable stuff.
Yeah, it was. It was truly poetic, the hat trick from Mikko Rantanen, sealed with that empty net goal there at the end. I, like a normal person, wanted to watch the better sport, so I watched this game from beginning to end as opposed to the 30-point blowout or whatever else was going on TNT while Shaq had to run and go to the bathroom or something. So yeah, I was locked in on this, and you're exactly right. 30 seconds into that third period, Nathan McKinnon absolutely blows by Jake Ottinger, and the air is sucked right out of American Airlines Center. And it felt like, I'm not going to lie, I actually thought for a second, wow, maybe I should turn the basketball on. Maybe this game is over. Then I remembered 2-0 lead, most dangerous lead in hockey. And Jason, it was incredible. I know there was a lot of controversy amongst really just Avalanche fans that came off of the 2 power plays that led to the 2 power play goals that ultimately gave the Stars the lead. Whatever. No. It's the playoffs.
I saw it.
But, you know, at the end of the day, this is the stuff that you live for in the NHL. A former player putting his former team to rest on a hat trick. It was really a fun game Saturday night in Dallas.
Yeah, it certainly was. And look, I will tell you this. We had our buddy Dennis Bernstein on the show last week. I'm sure he'll join us in the next day or two. And he said if Dallas got through this series, he wouldn't be shocked if they came out of the West. He felt that strongly about, how battle-tested this team was, that if they got through this series, they could conceivably come out of the West. So hats off to the Stars as they get a remarkable win down 2-0 in that third period, coming back to win 4-2. And then you had the Blues and Jets. And boy, oh boy, down 3-1 with under 2.5 to play at home. Somehow Winnipeg gets up off the mat with the empty net and about 2 minutes to play. They get one. Soon after, they get another. And then we go to double overtime, and the Jets are able to win it there. And Winnipeg, a remarkable rally. Again, the 2 Game 7s this weekend, just outstanding. And Winnipeg moves through to the next round. And I mean heartbreak for the St. Louis Blues to lose this way, Sam.
Yeah, and Jason, this one was funny because obviously the discussion the entire game was Connor Hellebuck's been pulled from like almost every game in this series.
Yep.
And when he needed to, and he didn't look good early on. When he needed to make saves late, he made them, and Jordan Binnington was really standing on his head. I think there are a lot of people that would agree with me when I say there were about 5 different opportunities the Jets had to end this game in the first overtime period, and Jordan Binnington made some of the saves of his career. I mean, the guy was absolutely incredible for the St. Louis Blues. It really is unfortunate that they weren't able to get it across the line there at the end. They go the final 3 periods of the game without scoring a goal. That's tough, especially in the Stanley Cup playoffs. That's a recipe for disaster in a Game 7 where you need to win. Obviously, it's win or go home. The Blues were talented, but the Jets were always more. I think the curse of the President's Trophy just survives another round, but I'm with Dennis. Like, we'll talk to him about it soon. Like you said, I think the Stars could get past the Jets, especially after the showing we just saw against St. Louis.
Yeah, Hallebuck's got to be much better than he was in this series if they are hopeful of getting through to the next round. But man, if we're talking about NBA versus the NHL this weekend, it wasn't even close. And I'll say this too. The NHL was on ABC this weekend. And I don't know what the ratings did because neither of these and none of these markets are huge, national markets in the U.S. So I don't know what these did as opposed to the NBA series over on TNT, broadcast versus cable. And this is the inside baseball stuff that only geeks like us, or maybe geeks like me, only care about. But a good weekend for the NHL to certainly be on ABC. Panthers Maple Leafs gets started tonight, Sam. And we've talked about, sort of the hex for Canadian teams trying to get over the hump and win another Stanley Cup because it's been a while. And I don't know if the Panthers are going to make that easy on Toronto because this is a Panthers team that has certainly been battle-tested over several years.
They're a minus 125 favorite. I can't see in front of me whether that's for the game tonight or for the series overall. But what I will say is this, Jason Page, that speaks volumes towards how the book is looking at these Toronto Maple Leafs. They are seeing them exactly the same as we were looking at them in that Battle of Ontario.
It's on the
they
game.
Are a team that is not going to that is not going to contend for the Cup this year.
Minus 184 for the series is are the Panthers.
Yep. It was a good season, Maple Leafs.
The thoughts of Sam Yarnell do not necessarily reflect the thoughts of everybody on this show or Sports Wrap with Jason Page, the program. We love you in Toronto, watching us on Games Plus and Fubo. Go Leafs! Coming up in 10 minutes, a recap of this weekend's NASCAR Cup Series race with Brian Twining of Bleacher Nation. Joey Logano basically punched his ticket for the playoffs after a DQ the previous week in Talladega. Logano getting the win in Fort Worth, Texas at the Worth 400. So Brian will help us recap a wild finish there. But let's talk about the ponies, Sam Yarnell. And it was the Kentucky Derby taking place on Saturday. And it was, listen, a muddy track. Man, it just blows my mind. Can I, just as an aside, you watch these horses going around the track. And I mean, there's mud, there's puddles on the track. And I'm just cringing the entire time. I know this is the horse racing novice in me. I'm waiting for these horses to just wipe out. I'm waiting as they go around the bend and go around the turns and all that. And they're bumping up against each other. I'm waiting for horses to just wipe out and there to be like a pile up in aisle 4. And I don't know how it doesn't happen. I don't know how these majestic, gorgeous creatures. I mean, watch them coming out of the gate. There's literally puddles on the track. How they don't wipe out is beyond me, but they don't. And they make it around, and Sovereignty wins. It's been a bad year for journalism. Can I use that joke? It's been a bad year for journalism, and it was a bad race for journalism. I mean, not a terrible race. Finished second. And Sovereignty just had better closing speed when all was said and done. But Sovereignty is your winner at the Kentucky Derby. And now there's talk Sovereignty may not even race in the Preakness, which is kind of weird. Their trainer, the trainer for Sovereignty did not commit, Bill Mott did not commit to the idea of running the race in the Preakness. Said, hey, I want to see how the horse feels in a few days and then go from there. I'd be shocked if the horse didn't run in the Preakness. I mean, the opportunity to obviously win a Triple Crown is there, but Sovereignty wins, beats the 3-1 favorite journalism, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you never want to see the Kentucky Derby run on an off track, but it feels like we've had it run on an off track for like 5 out of the last 6 years. It seems like the first weekend in May in Louisville is always rainy for some reason in the modern era. But that said, it was a great race. And obviously the owner of Sovereignty also owns Gold Coast or whatever the name of the horse is that won the Oaks on Friday. So great weekend for, and I believe he's a Middle Eastern ruler. A Saudi prince or something like that.
Sure.
So yeah,
I'll go with it.
Great weekend at the track for that guy. But this feels like it's something that's become more and more popular since kind of, I want to say American Pharoah in 15 or 16, where you have these horses that'll win these mainstays, like the 80-1 horse from 2 years ago, whose name is completely eluding me right now, and I don't know why. But the Real Long Shot, who won the Kentucky Derby 2 years ago, the 149th, I believe they did not run in the Belmont or the Preakness. It's becoming more and more popular for these horses to win one and then not even worry about the other two and chasing the Triple Crown, Jason. So, I think it's good, though, for the sport in that it opens up more popularity to newer horses, newer horse owners, more specifically. Yeah. Like last year, for instance, you had the Belmont won by former Major League Baseball player Jason Worth and his horse. So, I think it's good for a sport in horse racing that's kind of seemingly coming to the end of this lull that it's been in for the last 10 to 15 years. Maybe if we continue to have these Kentucky Derbies and these major Triple Crown races on off tracks and in sloppy, rainy conditions where the riders at the end of it just look like they took a mud bath with a pig, then hey, if it's good for horse racing, it's good for horse racing.
140,000 people there when that was crazy. When that race took place. By the way, one of them was not Mike Tirico, who had to go home early. Hopefully he's feeling better. Apparently, during the broadcast, and I didn't watch the early parts of the broadcast. I mean, this thing is on all afternoon. They try to make it like the Super Bowl, where it's on throughout the entire afternoon, and they're interviewing different people, and they try to make it interesting. And bless their hearts, NBC does a great job with it, and they have for many years. But they do this thing where they have all this coverage. And Mike Tirico was on in the early going, and apparently he had a really rough go of it. And a lot of people watching were saying, what's wrong with Mike Tirico? Well, apparently Mike Tirico had some sort of nut allergy. And his allergic reaction to nuts made him very ill and under the weather. And he had to bolt from the broadcast. And I got to say, I'm not like shilling here for Ahmed Fareed, who's one of the other guys sort of at NBC that you don't see a lot, you don't hear a lot, you don't know a lot about. But that dude jumped in as a pinch hitter to host the coverage of the Kentucky Derby, and that guy showed out. Hats off to Ahmed Fareed, who had to jump in on short notice, probably had no idea when Saturday started that he was going to be hosting the coverage for the Kentucky Derby, and he jumped in and did an outstanding job in a very difficult spot. And so hats off to Ahmed Fareed. Glad that Mike Tirico's feeling better. He'll be the voice of the NBA on NBC, which, by the way, announced two interesting things, did NBC this weekend. One, they're bringing back Round Ball Rock, which we were all hoping they would. The classic theme song from the NBA on NBC from John Tesh. And two, the NBA on NBC will include the introduction of starting lineups before the game, which is something they used to do. I love it. I love the introduction of starting lineups. I always think of Michael Jordan and the Bulls being introduced, the Knicks being introduced. Great stuff. We're coming back. Talk some NASCAR next. Welcome back to the show. Coming up in 10 minutes, it's Odds and Ends, including a historic performance from Scotty Scheffler at the Byron Nelson in Texas, and a suspension on the way for Michigan head coach Sharon Moore. Speaking of Texas, let's talk about NASCAR in Texas this weekend. Brian Twining hangs out with us from Bleacher Nation, does a great job on NASCAR, joins us for our wraparound segment on Mondays. Fridays we preview the race, Mondays we recap the Cup Series race, and in this case, we're talking about the Worth 400 and the first win of the year for Joey Logano. And isn't it amazing? The week after his verbal blow-up over the radio at his teammate Austin Cindric, and then the fallout from that, including a rant towards Chipper Jones, the Hall of Famer for the Atlanta Braves, Joey Logano goes out and wins the Worth 400 for his first win of the season, Brian.
Yeah, typical Joey Logano fashion the last couple of years. He just kind of survives the day, and then he's in the right place at the right time when it matters most. And ironically enough, it ultimately came down to him choosing not to push his teammate on one of the final restarts that allowed him to get the lead when he chose to go behind Michael McDowell and not Ryan Blaney, which kind of is extremely funny after what happened last week at the end of stage one when Austin Cindric did not push Joey Logano to the win in that stage.
But what does it say about, the 22 here that to go through that experience last week and say what you want, good, bad, or indifferent about Joey Logano, to be able to bounce back the way he did and get the win this week? I mean, it as much as we can sit here and make fun of the histrionics of a Joey Logano, and God knows there's enough history to go through to fill an entire segment, an entire show for that matter. What does it say for Joey Logano, last year's playoff winner, to be able to bounce back this way?
I think it just proves once again why he is amongst the best in the sport, in that they're probably the most resilient team week in and week out and throughout a season. I mean, they can look like they're running poorly week before, and then the next week they're able to come out and recover and get a race win like this in a race that was as volatile as Texas, where guys were spinning by themselves, people were being taken out by other people's mistakes. And Logano, who started well back in the pack, I think it was 26th, was able to just slowly maneuver his way through the field throughout the day. And as I said, found himself at the right spot at the right time.
Yeah, and look, it's not the first time we've seen him do this, where he just sort of picks his way through the field and methodically moves his way up and puts himself in a position to win after last week being disqualified after finishing fifth and being disqualified for having a missing nut on his spoiler or something like that, and winds up getting the win this week. Couple other notes from this race. Ross Chastain, Ryan Blaney finished second and third. You're shaking your head. What comes to mind when I talk about Chastain and Blaney?
Well, two completely different cars right there. Chastain was one of the slowest cars on track, both on Saturday in practice and qualifying, and as the race began here on Sunday, and he still comes home with a runner-up finish, while Ryan Blaney, who started right around Joey Logano, was one of the handful of cars, him, Tyler Reddick, and maybe a couple others, who could actually make passes here at Texas and finds himself finishing third. So it just goes to show you again, at Texas Motor Speedway, the volatility at this track is not predictable, which as a bettor made it a very frustrating day because it didn't matter who was good, who wasn't. In the end, it was just about track position and who survived, essentially.
He didn't factor in the finish here, but say something for Carson Hocevar, who we had on the show earlier this season before the Las Vegas race. 22 years old. He was, on the front row, the youngest pole sitter, led only for the first 22 laps of the race, and still has a lot to learn in this process of becoming, one of the guys when it comes to NASCAR. But a big step for him in sitting on the pole.
Yeah, Carson Hocevar, one of the most impressive drivers this weekend. It came with no fault of his own as to why he didn't get the finish that he deserved. Him and Ty Gibbs just wound up on the wrong side of the pit cycle caution there in stage 2, which put them a lap down. Obviously, that's really difficult at a 1.5 mile track. But even when he lost the lead and he restarted, he was passing cars like they were standing still. I mean, he made William Byron look like he was driving a dump truck at some point while he was running still inside the top 5. And had he not suffered those mistakes or had that caution come out at the wrong time, Carson Hocevar may have still been there at the end competing for a race win, because from my perspective, he had quite possibly the best car on the day.
What happened to Denny Hamlin, by the way? I saw his car on fire. And he had finished on the lead lap in 21 straight races. Yeah. But it came to a fiery end for him on the 75th lap.
Yeah, it sounded like his engine just decided to go kaput.
Kaboom.
And completely blew up, and his oil pan had dropped from the car, which then obviously you got all of the ignitable substances within a NASCAR, and that wound up happening. And yeah, it's one of the biggest surprises of the weekend. That being said, from a betting perspective, I had nothing on or against Mr. Denny.
Last one. I got 30 seconds. NASCAR heads to Kansas next week. Early favorites, somebody you like?
It's got to be the Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, Tyler Reddick trio once again. I think you saw it here at Texas. Had this thing been run in a vacuum and there was no issues, the best 3 cars were the 5, the 12, and the 45.
We're still looking for a Bubba win. He's won there before. Why not a little Bubba?
Well, he's in the next ring of guys that are going to be competing here, but he's got to show up with Saturday speed, something they've been slightly struggling with.
Brian Twining, check him out. Bleacher Nation does a great job. Joins us every Monday on the show. Love you, man. Be well. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take it easy.
We're coming back. All right. Just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Monday. Couple of reminders. First of all, Sports Wrap with Jason Page, the podcast. Available on all your favorite podcasting platforms Monday through Friday. If you haven't checked it out yet, what are you waiting for? You can listen to us on the way to work, on the subway, while you're making dinner, whenever you're doing whatever it is you do. While you're watching your kid's baseball game, we all know how that could be at times. Make sure to go and check it out. All your favorite podcasting platforms. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Amazon, Spotify, you name it. We're on all of them. Go and check it out. You can also watch the show over on Spotify and YouTube as well, if you feel so inclined. And if you haven't done so yet, make sure to subscribe to our Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. It is fantastic. Everything you love about the show available on YouTube, including Sports Wrap Shorts, which we're always putting up there because news breaks sometimes right after we get done sending the show to all 220 plus affiliates in the U.S. and Canada. And sometimes that means we got to cut something just for our folks who subscribe to the YouTube channel. So it's SportsWrap and more on our YouTube channel, the SportsWrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. And without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. How does it feel to shoot 23 under par in a PGA Tour event and finish second? Better yet, how does it feel to shoot 20 under par in a PGA Tour event and finish third? Well, that's what it felt like for a couple of guys this weekend on the PGA Tour at the CJ Cup Byron Nelson, where Scottie Scheffler shot an astounding 31 under, tying a PGA Tour 72-hole record en route to a first-place finish. 61, 63, 66, 63 for Scottie Scheffler. I'd say he hit it pretty well. Almost $1.8 million, his first win of the year. And cue the golf pearl clutchers who are going to say, we need to play at a different course. These guys are just too good for these courses.
Yeah, that's crazy. Speaking of Erik van Rooyen, though, the guy who came in second, the South African guy,
South Africa.
He had the same final round as Scottie Scheffler. Scheffler's lead going into the third day or into the final day of the tournament was the same lead he finished with. That's incredible that a guy shot a 63 in the final round and made no movement whatsoever on the leaderboard. Absolutely bonkers. This is what you get. I mean, the odds told us that the tournament was going to go like this. Scottie Scheffler was plus 280 to win this tournament. The next closest guy was 12 to 1. That's what happens when you're $10 the favorite over the next closest guy in a tournament. Everyone knew this was Scheffler's home track. This was where he was going to come out and post an all-time PGA record-tying 4-day tournament score, tying Justin Thomas from way back in the day and Ludwig from a few years ago. This is truly dominant golf. But I will say, to all the people out there who complain about the Travelers or complain about the ease of golf when we get to the summer and all these guys are shooting 23, 30 under to win tournaments. Everyone's playing the same course. It's not like Scottie Scheffler's playing a different course than Erik van Rooyen is. It's not like these guys are all walking out and playing a different 18 holes. Who cares if everyone's birdieing 17? Because then when someone eagles, it becomes a heck of a lot more valuable. So I never really understood the whole notion of, oh, these low scores are bad for golf and we shouldn't have these guys going out to these courses where they can shoot incredibly low. They're professional golfers. They set par. Like, do you not understand that? Par is determined by them. So yeah, I'm all for these super low scoring tournaments. I want to see Scottie Scheffler win a tournament at 40 under.
Can I just give you Siwoo Kim? Let me present to you Siwoo Kim, who shot 15 under for the tournament and finished 16 shots back. Last but not least, odds and ends. Sharon Moore, the head coach of the Michigan football team, going to pay the price for the sins of his former head coach, and I guess to some degree his own sins. He is going to be suspended for 2 games, reportedly, Sam Yarnell, as part of the whole Connor Stallions Gate saga that engrossed the Michigan program last season. Or a couple of seasons
so
ago.
maybe you can correct me, Jason, or maybe you and the interns can look this up while I'm talking.
Sure.
But when I thought about this, I originally thought about the penalty that was given to Jim Harbaugh while he was still at Michigan before he left for the Chargers, when Sharon Moore originally took over for Jim Harbaugh. And I was like, 2 games, that sounds awful familiar. 2 games, where have I heard 2 games before? And then I remember 2 games is exactly what Jim Harbaugh got back in the day, right? When all the Connor Stallions was all the rage. But remember, that penalty, they were very explicit in stating that suspension that Harbaugh got at the time was not because of the Connor Stallions thing. No, it was because of recruiting violations that had happened years prior, so that they could still leave the door open for people to be punished because of this Connor Stallions thing later. This thing's a mess. The NCAA's a racket, man.
More suspension ties back to allegations he deleted a thread of 52 text messages with Stallions. So, it's going to do it for us. It was fun for a Monday. Who loves Mondays? I mean, we love every day, but who loves Mondays, really? Thank you to Noah Dalzell. Thanks to Brian Twining. Thanks to you, Sam Yarnell. Thanks to all of you for watching. We'll see you back here on Tuesday.